Hello BookTube, no ring light today because I didn't feel like putting in my contacts and I kind of want to see. So if you are on BookTube and you film with a ring light and glasses, you know the struggle. So welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about a few books that I read recently. The first one is George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation, with an introduction by Letitia Baldridge. And this was actually published by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, and it's essentially a reproduction of a class exercise that George Washington completed when he was 16 years old. He compiles 110 rules and guidelines of etiquette, which I believe he based off of a list that was originally created by a group of 16th century French Jesuits. So I found that really interesting because I think a lot of these rules and guidelines really transcend place and time, and I did find a lot of them very applicable to today. So I actually wrote a few of these down, so I'm just going to share. So some of the rules included were things like not biting your nails, refraining from laughing too much or too loudly as to create a public spectacle, not showing happiness at others' misfortune, not staring at anyone's blemishes or scars or inquiring about them, and not relating news unless you're sure of its veracity. There was also a lot about dining included, which I thought was very interesting considering that George Washington was very conscious of his mouth due to some pretty painful dental work and having trouble finding dentures that were comfortable and didn't cause him problems when he was speaking and eating. And also, I thought it was interesting because as an adult, George Washington is a frequent entertainer, so much so that actually in 1797, he noted in his diary that he and Mrs. Washington dined alone for the first time in 20 years. Which, being someone who really relishes alone time at certain points, this was just unbelievable to me. But I guess that's the price you pay for being the first president. The next book that I listened to was called Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters and How to Harness It by Ethan Kross. Now, the author of this book is a psychologist, and so he included a lot of research about the brain and human behavior, and he also incorporated some personal anecdotes and some information from some case studies. Essentially, this talked about the voice that we all have inside of our heads, and unfortunately for a lot of people, that inner voice can really be quite the tormentor. I am someone who really ruminates over things, and so if you are like that, then you understand, that sort of thought process really does create a lot of anxiety and worry and stress. And this author actually goes through some pretty simple strategies to try to turn that sort of inner chatter around. I did appreciate the fact that at the end of this book, he had a tools section that literally just laid out things that you should do to help either quiet your inner chatter or to try to turn it around to a positive in your life. And one of the things that he talked about was getting outside and getting close to nature, which I do think is something that has been proven to reduce stress and to help with some of the things that he talked about. But he also talked about taking yourself out of the situation by talking about your current struggle or stress in the third person. So instead of focusing on how I feel and I was hurt and I was wronged, talk about it in third person to try to put it in a little bit of a better context. So I don't know if these little brain hacks work and if it's that simple, but hey, I'm willing to give it a go. I did think this book was very readable and relatable, and it actually had some common themes with the next book that I listened to as an audiobook, and that was called The Invisible Corset: Break Free from Beauty Culture and Embrace Your Radiant Self by Lauren Geertsen. And these two books I just got on my Libby app because they fit my filter. They were available now and they were nonfiction. And this author, I believe, typically writes things about healthy eating and healthy living. So this was a little bit of a departure from what she normally writes. And in the beginning of the book, it does go through a bit of the history behind beauty culture and what that is. And essentially, the author argues that a lot of these unrealistic beauty expectations that are put on women in our society are really part of this kind of patriarchal domination, and how beauty culture, what it does is it really dictates how women feel about themselves, how women look, how women spend their money, and how they spend their time. And I thought that was pretty profound and thought-provoking, but I didn't agree with everything that this author said. And there were parts of the book where I did feel like the author was on a bit of a soapbox, and she did seem to call out women who have kind of caved to this beauty culture by still wearing makeup and heels and that sort of thing. And I know that wasn't her intention, but it just felt a little bit too preachy for me, because I am definitely for people doing whatever makes them feel good. So if your beauty routine is part of your self-expression, then that's great. But I do think it's worth considering when we are spending our money and spending our time on things. You know, is this something I am doing because I really want to do it and because it makes me feel comfortable, or am I doing it because I'm trying to adhere to someone else's expectation of what I look like? And I do think there is something to be said for feeling more confident in yourself. And if you are more confident in yourself and you do kind of break away from some of those expectations, what other people think or say won't have as much of an effect, because unfortunately, I think, and the author points this out, from a very young age, you know, girls are expected to be pretty and nice. And it's really all about how they look and how they make other people feel. So I do think that girls and women should be complimented for things other than how they look. I think they should be complimented for their ideas, for their contributions, for their professional achievements. And there was a good bit of this book that included some personal development strategies and some journaling exercises. Some of it was a bit woo-woo for me, which usually I'm here for that, but this was a little bit too much for me, I think. But overall, an interesting book, and I'm currently reading a couple of books. The first one is The Art of Civilized Conversation, A Guide to Expressing Yourself with Style and Grace by Margaret Shepard with Sharon Hogan. And a lot of the rules that George Washington included in his rules of civility are included in this book as well, but this one is a little bit more of a how-to as far as how to initiate conversations, how to work a room, how to handle awkward social events and things like that. So I'm really enjoying that one. The best book I'm reading right now is The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream, The Hunt for a Victorian-Era Serial Killer by Dean Jobb. And this is, of course, my buddy read with Lady Jane Books. And you know, anytime we get together, it's going to be a great time. So I'm really enjoying that read, and we should be doing a live show on that coming up probably next weekend. So be on the lookout for that. It will be on this channel, hopefully, if I can get StreamYard to work and, you know, rural internet. But we will see. Let me know, guys, if you have read any of the books that I talked about, or if you're interested in any of them. Please shoot me a comment. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope everyone out there has a tremendous day.